Now from the ballot box to the jury box, questions remain about just how much Hunter Biden's felony conviction could sway voters who were convinced the DOJ has been weaponized against Republicans. Some Trump loyalists say Hunter's guilty verdict changes nothing. Republican Matt Gaetz calling the gun conviction, quote, kind of dumb. While Democrats say it is proof positive politics have nothing to do with DOJ investigations and prosecutions. Let's turn to our political analyst, Democratic strategist Basil Smikle, and Republican political strategist Susan Del Percio. Guys, thanks so much for coming on here. We're hearing a lot of different reactions from Republicans specifically. Susan, from that kind of dumb comment to some calling this accountability, to others saying it's a distraction. Why not a unified voice?
Because the Republican Party actually is never that unified on something that has so many nonsensical parts to it. And that's what's so hard here, is that you have some Republicans, there are a few who still say we believe in our judicial system, that law and order, we believe in the jury process. Great. Then there are those who are trying to process and somehow turn it around as it's part of Biden's cabal against Trump, and somehow I can't even follow the train of craziness there. Then you have those, and ironically, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Congressman Matt Gaetz is kind of right on this.
He's usually on the extreme side.
And I won't say it's dumb. What I think it's more in line with, or what some members of Congress like Lindsey Graham have said, is that if not for his last name being Hunter, these charges would not have been pursued, which, fair enough, you can say the same thing about Donald Trump.
Politicians haven't said that, but a lot of legal experts have said just that he was maybe treated more poorly by the judicial system than other people would in his same situation if his last name weren't the president's last name.
And here's where part of, I think, the confusion is with the Republican response is we all know, well, I shouldn't say we all know, Republicans and a lot of folks out there know that this won't have any play on the election. I mean, we're going to have a debate in less than 15 days from now. I promise you, we're going to say, Hunter who?
Well, we'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see if we get there, because it's not the only case that Hunter is facing, obviously. Before you respond, Basil, let me play some of what we are hearing from Democrats.
Apparently, when a Republican is convicted, it's weaponization. But when a Democrat is convicted, the president's son no less, that's justice. The divide here is stunning, and it's a great reminder that one political party remains committed to the rule of law and the other doesn't.
Basil, what do you see as the impact, perhaps, on the 2024 election?
Yeah, I don't know that it has any significant impact on the election. Democrats who are going to support Joe Biden will continue to support Joe Biden. And I think actually independents have found a way and will find a way to separate what the president, the president and his ability to govern the United States versus what his son has done, which the president himself has created that clear line. So I do think independents won't kind of bring those two things together. They'll clearly separate them. Republicans will continue to use it as a rallying cry for their supporters. And to Susan's point, what you're seeing is them finding a way to trying to reconcile what they want, what they feel, perhaps, versus the reaction from Donald Trump and how they're going to have to navigate that. It's them trying to contort themselves into some kind of language that walks a line, and because they can't do it well, it looks very clumsy. So that's, I think, what you're seeing. But the reality is that Democrats are saying the right things here, that this was his son. You can see that the father, Joe Biden as a father, is clearly upset. He's clearly grieving. And we'll give you we'll give you that sort of blah, as we would say, to be able to be the father. But we understand that he's still doing his job as president of the United States.
Which, just to follow up on that, that is one place where Republicans can really overplay their hands, and it could affect the election, is if they go too far. Yeah. I know it's shocking, Anna, to hear that Republicans may push an issue too far. But this is one place where I think it would turn off independent swing voters if Donald Trump in the general election goes after Biden, especially on his son, and using the legal system as a way to prove himself being a victim. I don't think that will sit well with independent voters.
I mean, there's also this other major difference, right, between Hunter's case and Trump's case, and that is Hunter is not a candidate.
Right.
That's right.
His father is, but Donald Trump is the candidate. And of course, Hunter's cases deal with some gun paperwork, some tax crimes, but Donald Trump's convicted for what is connected to an election interference scheme. And then he's charged with, interfering in the 2020 election. Do you think voters understand or recognize or care about that distinction, Basil?
I do think they care and they recognize it. 34 guilty verdicts makes a very big difference and creates an extraordinary contrast against what we're talking about with respect to Hunter Biden. Donald Trump tried to change the outcome of an election and engaged a larger sort of conspiracy to do it. This hush money case is just one cog in that large wheel, and I think a lot of voters are quite aware of that and are looking forward to hearing more about how that spills out in the public, in sort of public discourse very quickly. The one thing that Republicans are weaponizing, and our colleague Molly John Fast actually talked about this, is Hunter Biden's addiction. And that, to me, going to your point about overplaying, I think will have stronger ripple effects, because the ways in which they've talked about Hunter Biden's addiction, I think resonates with a lot of people, a lot of families who have to deal with members who are engaged in the same kinds of troubles trying to fight that. And when they look at Republicans with this sort of strong arm of someone who's clearly suffering from a disease, that could backfire. One of the things that Susan discussed.
Gotta leave it there today, guys. Thank you both so much. Susan Del Percio and Basil Smikle, great to have you.